Caucasian. When you think of the Caucasian race, you might picture a tall, pale guy sipping coffee in a cozy cafe or a Mediterranean artist sketching under the sun. But hold on, the term Caucasian goes far beyond just skin color. Originally, the term Caucasian comes from the Caucasus Mountains, between Eastern Europe and Western Asia. But today, it's used to describe people with European, Middle Eastern, and even North African roots. And while we might think Caucasian equals white, it's actually more complicated than that. Because, check this out, race is more of a social construct than a biological truth. So, who exactly are Caucasians? You've got your Northern Europeans like the Irish, Scandinavians, and Germans, with their fair skin and often blonde hair. Then, you've got the Southern Europeans, like the Italians, Greeks, and Spaniards, with olive-toned skin and dark hair. Move eastward to the Middle East, and you'll find groups like the Arabs, Persians, and Armenians, who share deep historical roots with Europe. Time for a history lesson. Back in the day, Europeans loved to group people by their physical features. Yep, we're talking hair, skin tone, and even head shape. They called this practice of classification racial science, and it led to the term Caucasian being used for people with lighter skin. Now listen, it was tied up with ideas of superiority and colonialism, with the belief that Europeans were somehow better than other groups. Yikes, right? Thankfully, we now know that all humans are far more similar than different. Negroid. First things first. Africa is where we all started. You know, first humans walking around, doing their thing. But the black race has one of the most complex histories. Ancient African civilizations like Egypt, Axum, and Mali were world-renowned for their scientific achievements, art, trade, and inventions. The Egyptians alone gave the world the pyramids, medicine, and so much more. But the black race's story took a dark turn when the transatlantic slave trade began in the 16th century. Millions of Africans were forcibly removed from their homelands, shipped to the Americas, and subjected to brutal slavery. This painful chapter is also where the black community's spirit truly shone. Even under the worst conditions, black slaves forged new identities, created unique cultures, and fought back in every way. Fast forward to the 19th century, where abolitionists like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman led the charge against slavery, culminating in the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. After the Civil War, black Americans faced the harsh realities of segregation, Jim Crow laws, and discrimination. Yet the fight continued. The Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s marked a golden age of black culture, with legendary figures like Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, bringing African-American art, music, and literature into the spotlight. In the 20th century, the civil rights movement led by figures like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Rosa Parks demanded justice and equality. Not just in North America, but in Jamaica, Haiti, or Cuba, the black communities in the Caribbean have African roots too. Descendants of enslaved Africans who were brought over to the islands and created some of the most vibrant cultures on Earth, from reggae to rumba. And even Afro-Latinos, people in places like Brazil and Colombia, who proudly carry their African heritage while embracing their Latin roots. Mongoloid. The looks, straight black hair, dark eyes, and sun-kissed skin are often the main features. But with Asia's diversity, you'll also see pale skin and a whole bunch of hair colors. But the real magic of the Asian race is in its culture and history. Whether it's the inventions of ancient China, like compass, paper, and printing, or the epic stories of Hindu gods and Buddhist teachings from India, the Asian race is filled with culture and diversity. In East Asia, you've got China, Japan, Korea, and Mongolia, each with their own unique flair. Then there's Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, and more, with colorful festivals and beautiful landscapes. Don't forget about South Asia, where countries like India and Pakistan have a whole other world of traditions, cuisine, and Bollywood that have swept the globe. And let's not leave out Central Asia, where Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan are all about nomadic roots and ancient trade routes, like the Silk Road, the ultimate fashion and trade route, where people from China to Rome traded goods and ideas. A bit deeper into the history. When Asia became the land of samurais and epic battles, Japan was kicking it with the samurai code. We're talking about honor, sword fights, and legendary warriors. At the same time, the Mongols, led by Genghis Khan, were on a world domination spree, expanding across Asia. And then in Korea, you had the Joseon dynasty, where art and philosophy were just as important as their epic battle strategies. In the 20th century, Asia was still making waves. India broke free from British rule in 1947, creating its own independent path to greatness, and China went through one of the biggest revolutions of all time, giving birth to the People's Republic of China. Amerindians, the indigenous peoples of the Americas, also known as Native Americans and First Nations, were the original owners of this land, with rich cultures and wildly unique traditions that go way back. From the mighty Navajo and Cherokee in the U.S. to the powerful Cree and Haida in Canada, these tribes are living history. They've been in here for thousands of years, thriving in perfect harmony with nature, building epic empires like the Maya and Aztec civilizations. But in the 15th century, when Europeans arrived, the party was over. Colonization, diseases, and forced displacement brought significant violence to indigenous populations. In the 19th century, the government enforced policies of forced removal through the Trail of Tears, where entire tribes, like the Cherokee, were relocated from their ancestral lands to the Indian Territory, now Oklahoma. Today, indigenous communities are pushing the world forward, fighting for their heritage. Whether it's standing up for Mother Earth or creating new art and music, they're still reminding us all about their incredible legacy. Australoid. The group once called Australoids were thought of as some of the earliest explorers of the planet, settling places like Australia, Papua New Guinea, and nearby islands thousands of years ago. Picture this. While most of the world was still figuring out farming, Aboriginal Australians already had a 50,000-year-long playlist of stories, art, and traditions. In Melanesia, people became masters of the ocean world, carving canoes and sailing between islands, all while learning amazing tattoos and dancing. Physically, they were described as having deep brown skin, curly or wavy hair, and strong, resilient builds, perfect for surviving in tough environments. Now subscribe and remember, genetic studies show that the differences used to define race are superficial and don't mean anything. Humans share 99.9% of their DNA, no matter what their racial background is.